I'm always experimenting with. And, I think for any business, you can have the best product in the world, but if no one
Yeah,
knows about it, then,
it doesn't help. Yeah,
it doesn't
screaming
work.
in the
So
forest.
Welcome back to This Week in No Code, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, JJ Englert, here with my co-host from Australia, or currently in Australia, David Pal. David, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. Good day from the Great Barrier Reef. I'm up in
There.
Cairns, or Cairns, or I don't know how to pronounce this town we're in. Everyone says it a little differently. Off to Melbourne later today, but it's great to be here. Lots of great stuff to talk about. First in the news this week, I want to give a hearty congratulations to our friends over at FlutterFlow. They
Woo!
announced their big fundraise,
Series A, baby.
$25 million in Series A from some
Get that
pretty
money.
good, yeah, from some pretty well-known investors, specifically Google Ventures, GV, obviously Y Combinator followed on, a few others, but Google coming in and putting their stamp of approval on this big funding round gives a lot of credibility to the no code world. As we've seen, Google has actually acquired other no code platforms in the past. Apps Flyer, I think, is what their last acquisition was, and so they were talking about building stuff on Google Sheets. In the early days, I thought this is where it was going to go. At some point, Google would say, "Okay, great." That was Glide. I thought they were going to kind of fall behind Glide because they were on top of Google Sheets, but it's nice to see that they're following other no code tools, big no code tools, and $25 million on a $170 million valuation in today's fundraising environment. Good for them. Really
Yeah.
excited to see what that brings. Hopefully, that means more developers on their team, more engineers, more features, better product. Good for everyone. So,
Yeah,
really
they
happy.
have around 10,000 paying customers, around 1 million users, and a handful of enterprise customers right now, raising
Hmm.
25 more million dollars. It's fantastic. You'd love to see
Yeah.
it. It's a tough time to raise right now, and they feel like they've taken the second place of under Bubble. Well, there's Webflow too, but like Webflow and Bubble raising 100 million Series A, and then FlutterFlow following up with a nice 25 million, but different times, different economies. And this 25 million probably would have been like a 50 to 60 back then. Maybe. I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah.
They were pretty
Yeah, I don't know.
generous back then.
But that's great. I mean, the fundraising is good, especially as they claim their minimal burn rate. So this gives them many years of runway.
Yeah.
Maybe, if nothing else, this is helpful to just give people some confidence that they're going to be around for a while.
Yeah.
So good for them.
So, yeah, really excited about that. Let's move on to Microsoft. They've released a Copilot Pro, which includes a code interpreter. It has capabilities such as accurate calculations, coding data analysis, visualizations. They quote it as it's an interpreter is a game changer for complex tasks, offering precision in calculations and coding. There's also GPT-4 powered Copilot chat. You could build your own copilots. It's integrated into Microsoft Teams, and it's a whole bunch of stuff. Essentially, Microsoft continues to add AI into their suite of products, including Copilot Pro now. Anything you want to say, David, before we move on to the next one?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was the whole move behind Microsoft taking such a big bet in OpenAI. They saw an opportunity for them to be able to use this everywhere. And
Yeah.
in turn, with this coming out, they then overtook Apple as the most valuable company in the world. And so they're using this in unique ways. It will be interesting to see how this changes how people use AI. Obviously, now you pay for this Copilot Pro, not to be confused with GitHub Copilot, right, which is just a small set of features. GitHub is,
Yeah.
is owned by Microsoft as well. This is for the entire suite, right? And so now this means anyone who's using Microsoft, which is most of the world, right now they can easily add AI into their workflows, which will be the first step in towards the whole world using AI, right? Everyone gets exposed to it. I think there are some free pieces as well, but in the pro version, you can use it for everything, including like one example I saw was turning Word documents into PowerPoint presentations. So really interesting to see how this will shape out. And as GPT-4 turns to GPT-5 and so on and so forth, there's a lot more that's going to be done. And I think this will also help with that feedback cycle for OpenAI to really train their GPT systems a bit
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. Well said there. Apple's got to be following up with some type of AI in the works. Like they're so far behind with AI. It's kind of unreal. I think that's just one of like the big company problems is like I'm sure they have a ton of things, but like rolling it out at that
Mhm.
scale is just putting them, I got to imagine, far behind.
Yeah, I think it's a perception thing, right? Like in the long term, it doesn't matter. Right now, in this moment, yeah, it feels like they're behind,
Yeah. It feels like 6 months
but
behind, but once they get there, it'll never feel like anything.
yeah, but they just released their own silicon chips that are definitely going to be more powerful and give them more control over some of these AI needs.
Hmm.
They're going to put this in such a high class way because it's Apple, right? Like
Yeah.
their whole brand is it works, it's great, it's exceptional.
Yeah.
And they're not going to misstep and mess this up like we saw with the early days of Bing Chat. We're going to see that. Like Gemini issues with Google, like they're not doing much either. I think Microsoft has first mover advantage, but I think
Yep.
everyone's going to catch up. And I don't think when we look a year or two from now, we're not going to think anyone's behind.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What's up next on the docket?
All right. So last week we talked about how David Friedberg from the All In podcast
Yep.
came in and said, "Hey, it's crazy how much we're paying for enterprise software. AI is really going to take over and really help developers build tools a lot faster, making the price compress into something closer to the cost of replacement." And so Chamath, I'm not going to mispronounce his last name, really well-known investor, lots of SPACs, made lots of money on his own investments. The CEO of Social Capital, he has launched his own incubator called 8090, where the premise is they are going to deliver 80% complete software at a 90% discount, which is pretty crazy. When you think about it, that's kind of like a wild statement. Hey, we're going to take any software you
Yeah.
might use at your business, build 80% of it, and give you a discount. He believes, and this is following what Friedberg said the other day, was with AI and offshoring, you're going to be able to build software a lot faster and a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool, but I'm curious that like 80%, like
Has he
we
done it
know
before?
from
Like, how can he just make these claims? Like, yes, I think you could get there, but like, he doesn't have a history of doing this type of stuff or validating it. It's a really bold thing.
I think he's going to be able to build the software. I'm not worried about building the software. I think he missed the mark a little bit on what 80% is good enough. I think it's the opposite problem, right? If he was building open source tools to get you 80% of the way there that would let you build the last 20%, I think that's
Nice.
more helpful because
Yeah.
as we see when we build things for clients, 80% of it is the same between everyone, which is right.
Yeah.
But nobody wants that 80% version that's standard. They all want the last thing that is special to them, right? Everyone wants the thing they
Yeah. Well
need
said.
specifically. And so I think that last 20% is really where the secret sauce is. And so it's almost like I'd rather build a series of bubble templates that get you 80% there and let you finish it however you want. That
Yeah.
makes more sense to me, but it depends on how he launches it. If it's more open source, if the code base becomes available, if it becomes like a template, I don't really know.
Yeah.
But Chamath is known for being like big, flashy with a little bit of not so much substance and like something weird going on in the background. So who knows what's going to happen? I think it's a fun concept. If nothing
Yeah.
else.
Well, we have a fantastic interview set up for today with Seth from No Code MBA. But before we get into that, we have one more piece of news. We want to talk about Glide's pricing. Yesterday, they released an update to the pricing plan, which is really changing a lot of things. And it feels a little bubble-esque of throwing
Mhm.
out a big pricing plan. But you and I, we're not Glide experts, but we brought in someone that is a Glide expert and that
Mhm.
originally created a entire company around building with Glide. His name is Jesus from the Low Code Agency. So we asked him what his thoughts were on Glide's new pricing. Here they are now.
Hey, it's Jesus from Low Code, and today I wanted to talk about Glide's new pricing. These new updates have been released yesterday January 17, 2024. And there are a few important things that you have to be aware in case of that you're building Glide apps for clients or you're using Glide internally at your business. The first important thing is that finally we got back the yearly and monthly plans. For a year and a half, we only had the ability to pay month over month, and now we have the ability to do the yearly plan when you save 20%. Originally, when Glide launched, you were building an app from a Google Sheet. That was the first native integration from Glide. Nowadays, when you start on the free plan, the only data source that you can use are Glide tables. You can no longer use a Google Sheet or AirTable or an Excel file as your data source. You can import any of these third-party data sources, but the data will no longer be synced. So the only data source that you can use are Glide tables here. You get pretty much every single component. You can only have one published app. The previous free version, you could have multiple published apps. Nowadays, you can only have one. You have two editors, so two builders, obviously. And remember, this in Glide is very important. You can have two editors logged in at the same time, building at the same time, only one of them. And another very important limitation is the number of users. You can only have 10 personal users on your app. Now, something important is that Glide tables, when your app is built on top of Glide tables, updates don't count. And that's why you see the 500 updates limitation only here on the Maker plan and above, but you don't see that on the free version. So you can modify your app as much as you want because updates don't count. So that's a good thing about the free version. Anyway, moving on to the next version, the Maker version, you now get the Google Sheets integration. You get like plugins or whatever we're calling them, integrations, OpenAI, Google Maps, Discord, a bunch of them. Again, limit one published app to editors, unlimited personal users. So the Maker plan is good for universities, education, like maybe even MVPs, where you're trying to build something like consumer facing, public facing. Again, the challenge is that if anyone tries to sign in with their work email, they won't be able to do so. But the limit here is that you get only 500 updates. So it's very important if you're building something here in the Maker plan, make sure that most of your data, most of your tables are using Glide tables and not Google Sheet. Otherwise, you'll eat up these 500 updates in no time. Another important thing is that integrations count as updates, and some of them count as 2 or 3 updates per action. So just be like very aware of that. You get Glide AI, you get custom branding, and you finally get here custom support. If we go over the list here, 25,000 records, a gigabyte of storage, and pretty much that's it. Then we get to the team plan, which previously was called the Pro plan. Now you get all traditional data sources like Airtable, Excel, Google Sheets, and Glide tables. In terms of integrations, you get a lot more. In here now you finally have unlimited apps, which is something that we have all been used to. 5 editors, 20 users. So this is like a very important limitation. Only 20 users can use the app within this current month. You might have 100 users on your users table, but only 20 of them will be able to log in, and then you'll have to pay per user. You get a couple of additional components here that were not available on the Maker plan, which is the signature pad and branded sign-in, basic API access, and protected columns. Now, the most important part here is the 20 usage limitation and the 5,000 updates. Previously on the $100 a month plan, you had 10,000 updates. Finally, we get to the business plan. Oh, something important about the team plan is that additional users start at 5 a month if monthly, or 4 if you pay yearly. Finally, back to the business plan, $249 a month. If paid monthly, it's $310. You can have all of the data sources. So now we get to Glide Big Tables, Postgres, MySQL, all of the SQL databases. You get all integrations, DocuSign, Twilio, etc. This doesn't mean that on any of the plans, you can use webhooks to achieve the same using Zapier or Make, though. Unlimited app, 10 editors, again, 20 users included. And this might be a challenge for some of you who are thinking about deploying Glide apps for large organizations, because then pricing is 10 monthly or 8 annual per user. Remember, again, only users who log in the current month count. And then 10,000 updates. If I'm not mistaken, previously this was 20 or 25,000 updates a month. And then you get some additional features like the call API feature, the single sign-on, it's a paid add-on, I think the most important part is the data sources. But again, you have to be very aware, because if you're using a SQL database connected to your Glide app, and I'm assuming here that you might want to do that because you might want to have a lot more records. So here you can have up to 100,000 records per app. You will eat up those 10,000 updates very quickly. So here we have the pricing calculator that'll give you an idea of how much you can spend. Something important as well is that previously updates were priced at $0.01 per update. Now 100% increased at 2 cents per update. But anyway, if you're in the team plan, if you have, let's say, 30 users and let's say 15 or let's do 20,000 updates per month, you're going to spend $439 a month or $475 if you pay monthly. So those are the things that you should be aware when using Glide. The maker plan, very limited, but the intriguing part is if the unlimited personal users setup will work, it'll be complicated. Obviously, if you're building an app for your business, you should start here on the team plan, if not on the business plan. If you need to rely, if you expect to grow and you want to start with a Glide Big Table to host or to store a lot of records. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Bye.
So I appreciate Jesus for going out there and making this video. David quickly responded to his post about it, adding some clarifications afterwards, but he wasn't too far off of like what it was. It's definitely interesting. I think they're targeting enterprises, and who isn't, right?
Yeah.
So I don't blame them there. Jesus thinks that this is kind of the end for Glide, having like consumer facing MVPs and stuff like that. We'll see. I don't think that's David's intention, but that's how the creators using it kind of see it. So it didn't have all the wrath that a bubble pricing update did, but I don't think the community is as big yet or as mature. And
we may not be in the weeds of that community enough to know what they're really saying.
That's fair too. But just another company updating their prices to, again, target enterprise customers. And I thought was particularly interesting here is the enterprise per seat customer. So it's like you are going to start charging companies almost like a Slack fee of like per $10 per employee to use this service. That's kind of what you see with Glide too, which is it's definitely interesting. And I'm interested to see how it works for them. I assume they just think like this platform is providing so much value. It's saving you so much time that, it's just going to cost a little bit extra per head and you'll probably be fine with that.
Yeah, it seems like they just want a piece of whatever SaaS you're trying to build. I mean, they're basically saying you can't charge for this, right? Because could you imagine like trying to build a service that is worth $10 a month to a business and then having to pay Glide $8 of that? Like you can't sell a seat, right? So that's basically what they're saying. Hey, you're not going to be pricing this
for consumers,
for people to be paying you for it, right? You're going to use this internally, and this is just going to be another thing people use. It does seem expensive, but for very large businesses, these couple bucks a month per head is nothing.
Right? And
I
mean, it does provide tremendous value, and if you build on top of that, you are saving tremendous time. And so that's probably just one of the things like, listen, we're going to save you countless hours every single day, week, month, and you're just going to pay us continuously for that savings rather than just like a one-time thing. So I'm interested to see. I hope it helps them, and I hope it helps that company grow and find healthy metrics. Otherwise, let's get into our interview with Seth from No Code MBA. So here we are with Seth, the creator of No Code MBA. Seth, thank you for joining us today. How are you?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm doing great. How are you?
We're doing good. Thank you. You are the founder of No Code MBA. For those that don't know, it's a learning institute online for no-code developers. You have a ton of different courses, but you didn't always start there. Tell us a little bit about how you got into this industry and when that was.
Yeah, sure. So I started No Code MBA about, at this point, about 4 years ago. Before No Code MBA, I've started other companies. I've just been an entrepreneur for about 10 years now. And I had worked at startups previously where I had been using no-code tools. And, whether it's Zapier, Airtable, doing kind of landing page generators or no-code kind of landing page creators and using it for different things within the different companies that I was either working on or working for. And the first no-code tool that that I used that was more of kind of an app builder was Glide. So I saw Glide. I probably saw it on Product Hunt, and used
It was like 2018, 2019.
I think 2019, yeah,
Okay.
and
A long time
connected
ago.
it to Google Sheet. Had an app that I could actually use on my phone, and that was kind of like a light bulb moment for me. Before that, in the past, I had tried to learn how to code, use Ruby on Rails. I had taught myself
Mhm.
HTML and CSS, but so I could kind of build basic websites, but I couldn't, build apps. And I think I got through some tutorials on Ruby on Rails but got stuck. And probably like many people, this might resonate, you just kind of get stuck when you're kind of trying to learn how to code. And then I never got past that, and it was too
As soon as
frustrating.
you as soon
Yeah,
as you get outside of the tutorial, like, oh great, I can copy what you've said. I can follow these instructions and do exactly as I'm told. But as soon as you try to branch out a little bit too far, you're like, we didn't learn that in this tutorial. I don't get it. Like, I don't know it well
yeah,
enough. Now I'm stuck. What do you do? Yeah, that's what
totally,
happened to me
totally.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I stopped learning to code and came across Glide and got super excited and started building, just trying to build different apps with Glide. I started a side project building Glide apps for events, like in-person events, so people could use those. And that's where I really started to learn more advanced things in Glide, because I was talking to potential clients. They were asking for these more advanced features that Glide didn't have yet. So I was building all these things that I didn't see any other tutorials or anyone else talking about some of the things that I was building for clients. So that's when, I guess that's when COVID hit, actually. So kind of
Yeah,
that
right
side
around that
project with
time.
the events,
The business, yeah,
essentially.
really kind of
I feel
evaporated.
like no code took off during COVID. Everyone was like, I feel like that's when I got into it. So many other people were like, finally I have the time to learn something, but I don't want to learn programming because I don't have 3 years.
Yeah, yes, totally. And I think I actually bought the No Code MBA domain in 2019 before COVID. So something I wanted to do, and I was thinking about creating education around this, but I really had the push to do it when COVID hit. And, I I was said, okay, I need to figure out something to do in case I have another business, which is related to college food pickup. And that business was also pretty impacted by COVID. So I was like, okay, I need to figure out some other business as a plan B, just in case, I don't make any money for the rest of the year. So I started creating Glide tutorials just based on what I had learned building for clients, and put them up just on a Webflow. I think I started learning a little bit of Webflow as well, put it up on a Webflow site, and there wasn't even any login at that point. It was just, the free tutorials with an
Mhm.
email capture below. Put them into the Glide forums. Those became pretty popular, and the Glide forums started getting like my first couple hundred email subscribers of people who just wanted to kind of learn more and stay updated. And after I got maybe 300 email subscribers, and I had maybe 4 tutorials, and all the tutorials are at the time and still is on No Code MBA are project-based tutorials. So you go through a real world project from the start all the way to the finished project. And hopefully, unlike coding, where you can get stuck after those tutorials, I think no code, obviously there's still a learning curve, but it's much more accessible. And I think once you kind of get the hang of these tools, you're able to kind of go on your own a lot more easily than with coding.
So
So I
this
put
was
up a
like a
paywall.
really good MVP. Like this is the way to test and validate that this idea is something people want. Right? I think a lot of people, they like to just like jump in and you know put paywalls everywhere and test them, see if people pay. But giving away things for free and getting emails and like, hey, people want to subscribe, they want to follow along, was like a pretty good signal before needing to invest
300,
too
400
heavily. Yeah,
emails too. It's like, okay,
yeah.
there's clearly enough.
Yeah, there's a need here
Totally.
from even the Glide community, not even the like entrepreneur at large who wants to build an MVP or someone working at a company who wants to learn Glide. This is like from the community. They're like, we want more content. That's a really good signal.
Totally. Yeah, totally. And I think it's another good lesson for anyone starting out to kind of focus on one specific thing. So I focused just on Glide. I wasn't trying to have, every tool on there at the beginning. And yeah, I remember at first I put a $49 paywall, one-time payment for lifetime access, and I had no idea if anyone was gonna sign up.
Mhm.
But I put that up, I sent out the email, and I think maybe, I would have to go back and check. I think, 30, 40 people signed up. And then that was like kind of a really cool moment of just realizing, okay, people are willing to pay for this. I had never sold any educational content before, so that was just very cool to be able to do that. And then yeah, the rest kind of grew from there. But that's kind of the beginning of No Code MBA.
Do you still build a lot with Glide?
I don't actually build a lot for myself with Glide anymore. It's funny that all those original Glide tutorials, I just recently took them all off No Code MBA because I'm working with someone now who's much better at Glide than I am, Oscar Brooks, who has his own Glide agency. So he's the new Glide instructor for No Code MBA, and Glide had not because those tutorials kind of weren't the reason those tutorials weren't useful anymore is because Glide changed their platform a lot. So a lot of the things that I talked about 3 years ago really weren't applicable anymore. So yeah, I tend to do most of my building now with Bubble and Webflow, a lot of Bubble personally. Mm-hmm. We can talk about different reasons that I do that, but I do think that part of it is I think Glide is a great tool. It's I'd like to spend more time building in it as well, but there's only so much time, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
this
you were building with Glide, and you learned some Webflow, and then how did you know you wanted to expand it into what No Code MBA is today? Was that always the vision to like just keep teaching more things and expand from Glide, or was that kind of just happy luck?
Yeah, the vision, yes, the vision was definitely to have education around a variety of different no-code tools across the stack. So right now there's Glide, Webflow, Bubble, Airtable, Zapier, and a lot of Bubble and AI now. FlutterFlow is coming soon with other instructors. So that was kind of the plan. I started with Glide, Webflow, Airtable, Zapier, Google Sheets, and then Bubble. That was what I think maybe 2 years ago I learned Bubble myself, and I got super into Bubble and adding that. And then now I'm bringing on other instructors to branch out to other tools. So yeah, that was kind of the vision from the beginning of having a variety of tools.
Cool.
So why no code? You found the magic of it, and then it started working with your Glide tutorials, and then you're like, all right, let me expand this. But why are you putting so much on this industry? Like, tell us what you think about this industry in order to like validate the effort that you're putting into like building a business for this industry.
Yeah, sure. So, and I'm sure you all both feel the same way running the This Week in No Code podcast. But I think just kind of what we talked about before, of even just my own personal experience of going from getting stuck trying to build web apps with code, and then once I started learning no code, being able to actually build real projects from it. So I think it's just so much more accessible. I saw it as an industry that was growing and only continue and kind of only going to continue getting better, and something that more and more people are going to want to learn in the future. No Code MBA itself, I felt like I was starting it fairly early. I think we're still very early in the no code space, but especially a few years ago, I felt like it was pretty early and there was a lot of room for no code education. Again, I think that's still the case, but even more was the case a few years ago. But yeah, I think the main thing is it's just so much more accessible for anyone to turn their ideas into reality using no code tools. And I saw that's why I'm personally excited. And then as a business was excited just because I saw an opportunity to educate people.
One last thing, the growth, right? Like we all want our companies to go from like 0 to 10,000, 0 to 100,000, right? But I also run a no code education company. And what I'm trying to get at is like the growth that we're seeing. Like we know that there's a ton of people in this industry, but when it comes to education, is the growth still promising, going up to the right at a rate that you would like? Or have you seen dips of like, hey, coming out of COVID, it got dipped down, or coming out seasonality stuff? Like, what are you seeing in growth on your side?
Yeah, and right now we're at over 4,000 paid members on our No Code MBA. I've seen the
Congrats.
growth actually. Thank you. Yeah, so it's accelerated in the last year and a half. I would say AI has been a really big accelerant for it. I think
Yeah.
that it's something that just brings this idea of kind of creating without writing code to more of the mainstream, and it ties in really well with no code in general. And I think it's kind of a, you know, what we talked about before, 3 years ago was really early on. I think it's still early, but it's growing, and more people want to learn these tools as they're starting to see more successful companies that are built with it, and it's just becoming something that they're seeing around more. Maybe they're finally getting around to wanting to build with Bubble or Airtable, or these tools that they're seeing more and more. So I'm seeing it accelerate. Part of that might be just, with No Code MBA specifically, maybe people have seen a No Code MBA around a little bit more, so it takes time to just build that brand also. But I do think AI is a really big accelerant for the no code industry.
Yeah, I mean, 4,000 is a successful business, but like Bubble has several million users. So like literally 4,000 is just scratching the service, supposedly, right? So you got to think
Yeah.
it's continuing to be a huge opportunity.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of room for education, totally, in the no code space.
And I want to put a pin in the Bubble and AI and how you're using it together. But who's your target audience? Are you aiming for people at work who are trying to use no code tools, learn how to build the Glide app for whatever they're doing during their like full time job, or are you targeting entrepreneurs who are trying to put their vision into life?
Yeah, there's two different paths on No Code MBA. So one is for the more internal automation track. So if someone wants to learn how to use, Glide or Airtable, Zapier, those types of tools, that's one path. The other path is the more entrepreneurial. You want to start your own business, you want to learn how to build web apps, you want to learn how to, build, your own AI integrations with those web apps, and that's the other path. I think that the target it could be either one, because I think it's just kind of a function of kind of the wide range of what you can do with no code. That is something that I do struggle with sometimes in marketing, is is it better to narrow down and say, hey, it's for one specific type of person, and I have done I think maybe the marketing's a little more focused on the entrepreneurial side of things, and more customers are I think coming in with that, but the internal tool track is there as well.
Interesting. And so tell us a little bit about marketing. How do you find people interested in no code? Is it just putting out content? Do you spend a lot on ads? Is SEO a big game? Like what do you find successful? If that's
Yeah,
too much
it's
secret sauce, that's fine too.
no, I'm happy to share. It's really a mix of I think all of the above. And I wish there was like one kind of magic marketing, channel or something that would just work perfectly and never stop working. But I try and do a variety of things. I've been investing a lot in YouTube lately. So I think now we're close to like 3,500 YouTube subscribers. So hoping that can grow into a really good channel over time. One of those things that just kind of you have to keep doing every week,
It's hard.
and hope that the results really show up. And I think it already is, and I think we'll kind of, that's going to be a really big driver in the future. SEO for sure is helpful, and just kind of community, posting on X, Reddit, different things like that. Brings in people as well. I've done some paid ads as well across X, Twitter, Meta, Google Ads. So I've tried a bunch of different paid ad channels. That's something I want to do even more, and experiment with more across different channels. I think that's something that there could be a lot more opportunity to get into. And then just trying to build the email list, and trying to, if someone's checking out the site, how can you try and capture their emails so you can message them again in the future. But yeah, it's definitely something that I'm always experimenting with. And it's, I think for any business, you can have the best product in the world, but if no one
Yeah,
knows about it, then
it doesn't help. Yeah,
it
screaming
doesn't.
in the
So
forest.
yeah,
What about like
totally.
popularity? Like each year there's new tools and there's new hype for tools, right? We're big Bubble guys, but we like everything. Is there like is Bubble still the most popular thing for No Code MBA, or is there another tool that is maybe more popular that you're seeing or anything like that?
Yeah, and part of that is the function of my own, I
Who we
guess,
are and what we do, and
feel as well. And I also am, a big Bubble guy,
yeah,
but also like all the other tools as well. I think there's probably the most Bubble education in terms of web app building, especially web building apps with AI. That's something that I built out a pretty in-depth course now for building a variety of different uh, Bubble apps with different AI APIs, like a lot of the open AI APIs,
Mhm.
assistance API, a lot of image generation APIs, things like that. So that's something that I think people are still really interested in learning Bubble. In terms of web app builders, there are people who ask for FlutterFlow. I think that's kind of one that's newer, but really powerful and is becoming a lot more popular. And there is going to be a FlutterFlow tutorial really soon on No Code MBA. I worked with Doc Williams on that, so that'll
we
be
love that.
launched soon. Yeah, he's great. And yeah, so I try and only put no code tools on No Code MBA that like I feel are more established and something that's really at a point where I feel like it's worth, I guess, both learning, but there's also an aspect of, is it worth putting the
Yeah, you
tutorials
need the
together,
demand
and
there.
like I want to make sure that it's kind of okay. You want to make sure there's demand from the people who want to learn
Consumer.
it, and then also that the platform is kind of ready for that, and people are going to be happy learning it at the same time.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So tell us a little bit more about your journey into Bubble. You switch maybe, but you started with Glide and said, "Hey, let's expand into Bubble." Why did you make that jump, and how did it go?
So I was waiting for a while to get into Bubble until they launched their responsive designer, because I've
Mm,
used Webflow before. I was comfortable
Yeah.
building responsively. I had tried Bubble actually before, and I got really frustrated designing in it. So that was what I was waiting for. Once they released it, that's when I said, okay, now's the time where I'm going to sit down. And
hmm
at first I was the student, and I was learning myself how to build in Bubble. Really enjoyed building in it. I built the at first actually the No Code MBA platform was on Webflow and MemberStack, the whole
Hmm.
platform. And then I decided to, partially as like a learning project, but also because I thought it would just be a more scalable future platform, is move the entire learning platform to Bubble. So right now, like No Code MBA's marketing site is Webflow, but the once you sign up and log in, that's all in Bubble, and the community as well. So just as you all know, it gives you that flexibility to customize it
hmm
however you want. It just felt like a more scalable solution, kind of moving forward. So I'm really glad I did that. And yeah, I think it was kind of the ability to have the full customization. So for my use case for building out No Code MBA, it made sense.
How long did it take you to learn Bubble?
That's a good question. I mean, you know, I guess
Happens
it
in
probably took
waves,
me it happens in waves. Yeah, I mean, it probably took me a couple months to feel somewhat confident, and then as you know, it's the
like
more you
3 to
build, even
6 months
now,
for
I'm
like
still
your
learning
first
every
app.
time and every time I build, even now, I'm learning new things. But I think that there's stages where like maybe 2 months you can get fairly proficient, and then another 2 months you're probably. I think within 6 months you can get really really proficient. What do you all think in terms of, I guess, timelines there for yeah.
Yeah, I would say if you're working at it every day, you can in 2 to 3 months you can get there. But most
Yeah.
people's timeline is like 6 months of just like, hey, I'll do like 5 hours here and then 5 hours there, and I'll have a good week here. But it's usually around 6 months until like you have a full app that you built. Maybe even
Yeah.
you built it like twice because you built the first one. It's like that sucked, and then the V2, and it's like, all right, now I'm actually kind of there. Yeah, and then I felt like by a year I was like really dangerous.
Yeah, totally, totally. And hopefully by
Yeah.
using, whether it's No Code MBA or your course or any, all these courses out there, I think it can help people get up to speed more quickly because they're going to learn the right way to do things from the beginning, as opposed to kind of us, trial and error, figuring out the best ways to do things over time.
And I do think having a project or a client helps pull people over that hump between 3 months and 6 months when they're like, I kind of get it, to I really get it, and like, yeah, I can build anything.
And like creating urgency of like, I need to get this done.
They need to really invest, and they don't lose interest or something else comes up. Having something to pull them through, like you had the project of rebuilding No Code MBA into Bubble. You're like, okay, I have to do, like, this is my
I had a project like that too that I needed to do, and it like that entrepreneurial mindset.
I learned because I was rebuilding our platform from code into Bubble. It had to happen quickly, right? Like you had to do it.
All three of us, yeah.
And so I think that really helps. And if you're doing this for work, like you have a client and the client's like, hey, I need you to build XYZ, you have to figure it out, right? You have no choice. Otherwise, I think people do drop off. Like, I'm sure you've seen this, JJ, with your courses. I saw this with teaching boot camps. In the beginning, people are super gung-ho and they build something and they're like, great, I have a website. I've never done that before. And that kind of like scratches enough of an itch for them that they're like, great, I can build websites now. And they don't really need to get to that last stage of building like a full product. And some people end up dropping off in the very early days.
Yeah. Seth, David was one of Bubble's first instructors in the bootcamp side. And then I joined as a Bubble instructor later on and saw it all the way through its death. Its slow death.
Yeah.
Still sad because like those bootcamp days, they were so much fun. I remember it was like once a week, 2 hours a night, and you get together with like 10 people trying to learn in either beginner, intermediate, professional. And just teaching Bubble live is like really, I don't know. I really enjoyed it, and like having that energy and whatnot. And I'm doing a little bit of it now with like my teaching. I'm teaching for my city right now, like a no-code program, so teaching again live has been really, really fun for me. Seeing that inspiration of like new people like really getting it for the first time, because after you like teach in video for so long, you lose the ability to like see them actually get it on screen. Right. Of like when you show them something, they're like, oh, and then it's like light bulb, I'm inspired, so like I'm glad to be teaching live again for that reason.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've never done any live education. It's all been video based, but you're totally right. It would be because you get comments of like, oh, that was great. Right. Thanks so much. But you don't get to see it live of that actual experience. So that makes sense.
That unlock moment. I always found it a little frightening. No matter how proficient I was or how much of an expert I was,
of course,
how many times I taught the lesson, I was always nervous about getting that one question that I didn't really know, and someone would ask, and I'd be like, let me get back to you. Like,
I think that's perfectly fine. I think that's perfectly fine. I'm teaching a whole bunch of different platforms right now, and each week is a new different thing. Last week was Tally. The week before that was Framer. Next week is Notion. And when I taught them or showed them the AI creation in Framer, like everyone was like, oh my God. And then I showed them AI in Notion or just a sneak peek. And like people are getting, these are professionals that haven't had any kind of introduction to no code, kind of like really seeing no code and AI coming together for the first time. And it's really fun. I really enjoyed that. We're in a great time. Like all these different tools and platforms and AI, like it really, I feel like is like just a wonderful time for technology right now.
Yeah, hearing that is also almost like kind of a wake up call of how much of a bubble we're in. Frame with AI. Yeah, we saw that 6 months ago, but there's all these people who
we're definitely in a bubble.
Haven't heard of any of that before, and there's still
bubblers in a bubble.
I was talking to a guy on the boat over here. He's he works in pool construction in Arizona, and he's like, I need to rebuild my website. I asked my friend to do it, but he hasn't done it. He can't do it. Maybe I should try do it. I'm like, I mean, there are so many tools now to make this really easy. He goes, well, we're using WordPress, so I should be able to do it, but like, I don't know. I don't think I can do it. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, you
Yeah.
definitely can. Like, there are so many tools now that will make
Yeah.
this really easy. Like, you
There are
should go
those
check
people
this
that
out.
think like you're a programmer or you just build websites and like, oh, I had a
Oh, yeah.
website done like 5 years or 10 years ago. I pay for the hosting fees and like that's kind of it,
Right. Like, oh,
Right.
you could build me a website, and like the friend doing a friend a favor is just
Right.
kind of not a good, not a good way to run that.
But I think that's also exciting in the sense that like everyone is going to need a new website.
Yeah.
Technology is starting to be in every business. Every business is a tech business kind of going forward. Like you have logistics, operations, and like inventory, communications, sales, all these things are starting to require technical channels, technical
Yeah.
capabilities. And like you said, we're in a little bubble of like we are the first movers, right? The general public has yet to follow. And once they do, there's going to need to be a ton of infrastructure built. And
Yeah.
we'll be the ones being able to do some of that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So what's the future for no code? What do you think? What do you see happening? The intersection of no code and AI. We're living in 2150 in the Jetsons. What I guess actually the Jetsons lived already. They're a year past already. What does no code look like, or tech building look like for people like us?
So I guess there's the near future and the far future. The near future is obviously a little bit easier to predict. I think that the idea of actually writing code, whether for whatever you want to build, is going to become something that is done less and less.
Yeah.
Whether you're building visually, whether you're using an AI Copilot to help you build your app, to me that seems really clear. That you're going to be able to do those things. I still think you're going to need to understand how it all fits together. You're going to have to know what you want to build. You're going to have to know how to structure it. You're going to have to know there's all these other things that are going to go into it. But I think that if you have your idea, it's going to be even easier than it is now. Like learning Bubble and doing this is still very accessible, and I think it's going to be, with AI, it's going to make those things even easier to learn and build. I think that what is the interface that people are going to be doing in 5 years? Like, is it more of a chat interface where the AI is going to write all the code for you? Is it going to be more like Bubble? I don't know. I think that we're just going to have to see how the technology evolves. And actually, something I'm really excited about for a course coming. It should come it might be 2 or 3 more months, but an AI, a coding with AI for non-coders course. So kind of getting a little bit more into, how do you build a website with using ChatGPT and building a Chrome extension and these things that, learning a little bit of how to code, but without actual writing the code. And if we go 100 years into the future, I think it's more likely that you're going to be, the AI is going to be doing, I think, a lot of the work at that point. But
Yeah,
I don't
even know if we'll have interfaces at that point. It's just going to be like a talk to.
It's Neuralink.
Yeah, like a Neuralink.
Brain,
Yeah. Give me this information, show me this, do this. But like I don't know if there will be an operating system of something, but it's just, who knows if they have websites. I don't know. But I think it's really exciting. I think all the capabilities of what AI is able to do, generate music, no code game builders, like there's just so many different things that you can do now, and you don't need to go to school or whatever to do it. But also, like, no code is a great career. Like getting a full-time Bubble gig is a great career. Working in the agency world, freelancing, even, there was a thing on X posted the other day, an Airtable CRM operator for like $120,000 a year. Like, learning these skills, whether it's a very sophisticated no code tool like Bubble or something easier like a Notion and CRM like an Airtable, a Zapier, or a Make, like all these things are helping companies be more efficient, automate more, optimize more, and it's saving them money. And so learning these skills are going to give you an advantage. And so I hope we start to see more universities teach it as like a standard, like it's like these are your operating principles or like operating systems that you just need to know. Like you need to know these systems, like kind of how they would teach like Photoshop, like a Photoshop or an Illustrator class. Like give us some like no code class of like you need Airtable, Notion, Zapier, like all these kind of things of like don't leave college until you know how to use technology in a myriad of ways. I hope we get there. You know, I'm working with my local government. They've funded a program for me to teach locally no code to 100 people. And that's kind of, so I'm really excited to see that that's happening as well. And maybe more cities can start to do stuff like that just to help their citizens and residents just learn latest technology skills. So I'm excited about it. Any last thoughts before we get out of here?
Just to go off on what you said for a minute, I think I totally agree. I think just as kind of something that you can do as a career of going from, not knowing how to build a website, build an app, have, any of these automation skills, it's very attainable and I think realistic to if you're willing to put the time into to learn. Obviously, it's not going to happen overnight, but there's a lot of education out there to learn these tools, and maybe you're not going to go directly into $100,000 job, but you can go and start getting some clients and start making, I think, some real money on the side, and then that there's no reason that can't turn into a full-time, well-paying job. And I think that there's it's awesome what you're doing with your city government. I think, I've never thought too much about how to do something like that or how to scale something like that, but I think it's definitely worth thinking about, because I think governments do want to train their citizens on how can they totally. And so that's something that I'm going to think more about.
Cool. Well, let me know if you need help. I'm happy to help out. Where can people find more about you and No Code MBA?
So you can go to NoCodeMBA. Everything on NoCode, it's a one, you subscribe and you get access to everything. So check it out. There's a 60-day money back guarantee. So if you have 60 days after signing up, just send me an email and I'll fully refund you without asking any questions. So there's no risk to try it out. We have lots of different tutorials and we're adding more every month. As I kind of mentioned, some of the new courses that are coming soon. You can follow No Code MBA on X, Twitter, at No Code MBA. You can follow me at Seth J. Kramer. And just go to nocode.mba and check it out.
Great. I thank you for taking the time. I think you guys have a great offering of a ton of different stuff. And also thank you again for sponsoring the No Code Community Awards this year. Appreciate your support there and for taking the time to come chat with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Thanks, Seth.
So that was a fantastic episode with Seth. Really appreciate him coming on. I haven't had the chance to know too much about him yet, but taking the time on the podcast, learning more about him and his journey and why he built No Code MBA, I think is one of the more premier educators in the no code space, alongside No Code Alliance, Build Camp, No Code University, No Code Devs, and that's just about it.
Yeah, it always feels like such a well-polished offering. Like the No Code MBA, the branding is nice. It feels great. Lots to learn. It's fun to hear his origin story. A lot of the origin stories we're hearing are very similar, right? I tried to do something, tried to code, ended up in no code. Yeah, so I'm glad he's putting this together and promoting Bubble, which is great for everyone. Glide and all. We should have asked him about the pricing, what he thinks, but we didn't get that today.
So next week we have the king of FlutterFlow coming on, who runs a very large FlutterFlow agency. Not going to give you the name yet, so you're going to have to tune in for next week for that. But otherwise, that's that for this week in No Code. And David,
see you next week in No Code.
See you next week in No Code, guys.